Trent Cotney and John Kenney are dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal business and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar.
Hey, it's Trent Cotney. I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. I believe this is episode 105. As always, I got John Kenney with me. John, how are you doing?
Doing great. And yes, it is 105. It's absolutely amazing that
Yes,
we've had
sir.
these sessions for 105 podcast sections. But you know what? One thing about construction and legal, and that's why we call it law and mortar, we never can run out of topics to talk about. There's always something interesting going on out there.
Ain't that the truth? And now, especially, there's just a lot going on. And, you and I were talking in advance like we do. And one of the things I know there's, everybody's got concerns out there from immigration to subs to insurance. And, we were just at the Western States Expo. We had the opportunity to hear all that firsthand. Great expo, by the way. Kudos to those guys. I'll be heading off to LegalCon here soon for NRCA, actually tomorrow. So I'm sure I hear more there. But wanted to kind of switch gears, and instead of talking about things that may cause concern, I wanted to kind of flip to what we can anticipate in the future and kind of devote this episode to emerging technologies and kind of how we think that might impact the industry going forward. So, first, I guess let's talk about AI a little bit. We've talked about it in the past, but the presentation that I did on AI, I know you talk about it as well. Just a lot of interest in it, and it's going to be really incredible. One of the things I thought was really interesting is you were mentioning how AI can interface with both estimating and scheduling, and that's kind of what blew my mind a little bit. Why don't you talk about that? Because I know I serve as general counsel for Roofing Technology Think Tank, but you're also very active, in attending meetings. So why don't you talk a little bit about that aspect?
Sure, and definitely AI is changing on a almost, I hate to always say daily basis, so we'll say weekly. I've got calls later this week with some new technologies that are coming out. They want me to kind of do that, free test drive, right? Take it down the road and see if it actually works. Um, but as far as like estimating and scheduling, what has always been the most, it's time consuming without AI, right? You got to take your estimating back scheduling and you got to work it out with your project management scheduling, and you got to find out where you have your holes in your schedule, or you got too much, or what type of work is profitable, what type isn't profitable, et cetera, et cetera. So where AI comes in really, really handy is you can write, they're called bots for lack of a better word, AI bots. They're basically communication tools that can hook up to your estimating data and your project management or your operations data and find the criteria that you set. That's the most important thing, is setting your own criteria when you're doing this. So I'll give you an example. If I wanted to know about when my estimators should be looking more for work or looking for certain types of work, or when crews may have availability, that would be something that could come back in real-time information right back from the operations team, just to the estimating, say on a dashboard, make it real simple. And then that way the estimating team can concentrate on the most profitable work for the time frames that they need it. So I think that's pretty important stuff, and I'm seeing that starting to actually come into work and being tried out. So I'm excited about it. I think it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, what's interesting, it's mind blowing. I mean, the amount of efficiencies that you gain, and the way that I kind of thought about it is, if I could tell you you get an hour of your day back, like that's priceless to me, and you as well, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's all you got is time.
yeah, exactly, an hour, right? I mean, that's just thinking about that. If AI can help do that, and you are a contractor that is using that, then your competition is going to have a real tough time, right? Your competition is going to have a tough time trying to be able to compete with you with that level of efficiency. One of the things I also kind of want to point out is, as good as AI is, right, with all the nuances and changes and everything else that's going on, you still got to trust but verify, right? I mean, I don't know who said that originally. I always think of Ronald Reagan when I think of that, but it's you can rely on it, but there has to be some checks and balances. There has to be a human checking that estimate, checking that schedule, checking that contract to make sure that it is where you want it before it goes out the door. And I think you probably would get the same advice, right?
Yeah, and that's just it. It is to save time. it cannot replace the human mind thinking process, especially in our industry. I will argue that probably to the day I'm completely done speaking in what we're doing in the industry, because it doesn't understand what we're doing, but it can understand data. So if you give us specific points of interest to go gather, so that I now don't have to spend 3 hours manually gathering that, so I have that information in front of me to make a decision almost on, well, it is live. It's live on the spot. That's what you said, is saving time. And that's the key, especially if, like on the estimating side. When I teach estimating classes, I teach them their only real asset is time. It's time management, because there's only so many hours in a week that you can put an estimate out and have a chance of bringing work back in the door. So if I can make somebody in my estimating department more efficient, make decisions smarter, more educated, with more knowledge behind it, and what's going to happen is, I think you can increase your close ratios, and you're also going to increase the fluctuation, I think is the best way of putting it, in workload that's going out to your operations team, which I think is excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, if you are utilizing AI in your company or delegating that role to someone else, make sure you got an AI policy in place that says exactly that, that there's got to be checks and balances. You got to put some guardrails up. We're not to the point yet where AI is just turnkey. And even if it was, I'd still want some checks and balances, because ultimately it's your name, your reputation on the line, not AI, right? So that's what I think is really important. But I got to tell you, it is beyond anything that I could have imagined, its capability, and really encourage everybody to go out there and kind of take a look at it. The next thing I want to talk about, John, is we're seeing more and more automation and use of whether it's robots or drones or what have you in construction, and all aspects of both vertical and horizontal construction. Everything from robots that could tear off a roof to they call it 3D printing, but it's not really 3D printing. It's utilization of computer programs to map concrete and other things, foundations, what have you. Different systems are being developed, and then coupled with both AI and the equipment needed to do it, it feels like we are in another industrial revolution. That's really what it feels like. Everything seems to be moving so fast. So look, you've been in the industry for a long time. What do you think it looks like, let's say 5 years and 10 years from now? What do you think we can anticipate?
Well, I think AI, let's start with the drones. I mean, drones have been out there for a while, and we've used them for various applications, whether it be safety or operations check, or doing inspections. It's big in the inspection industry. But I think what's going to happen now with AI, it's going to mainstream drone technology. It's not, you're going to be able to program what you want, and you're going to be able to get information out to go into a software program that comes from the drones to gather even more information. So imagine being able to program drones that are going to go fly over your jobs and gather specific safety information that you want from that, to be able to come back, excuse me, into a program and give you exactly the logistics and the information that you need. That's big. Now, I think you're going to see drones be no less common than having a truck to drive to a job site. I really do. I think right now they're kind of like not a specialty, but not everyone has them. But I think within the next 5 years, drone. We're not going to talk about drones. They're just going to be, well, what does your drone do compared to my drone? Simple as that. Robotics, I think they're coming out now. You and I, especially with RT3, are seeing them, where they're starting to have roofing contractors beta test them. And, they may seem very simple now, but always got to understand that when robotics are being beta tested, it's for a next greater purpose. It's never for the purpose they're being tested for. So I think you're going to see a mix of humans and robots become I don't want to say commonplace, because I think it's going to be, I think your higher end asset oriented companies are going to embrace them first because of the money out. But once it starts to drill down, I think within 5 to 7 years, you're probably going to see a good 10% mix in the workforce of robotics and human. That's just my thoughts from being around. You are right. You're right. We're in a revolution right now. It's technology, it's intelligence, it's everything imaginable. Speaking to manufacturers, just jump off a little bit on the show. What we're seeing and thinking about, they're doing the same thing in their R&D division. So I think there's roof systems coming out in the next 5 to 7 years that we'll be like, wow, I didn't even think we could do that. So I think it's all coming.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you just said. The other thing that I'll add on to that is I do think within 5 years you're going to start to see some adoption of, automation, whether it's robots or drones, in, less than 20%. It's gonna be just like when drones initially came out. It was
Hmm.
gradual, right? But you're going to start to see that happen. I think within 10 to 15, you're going to see manufacturers start to have their own R&D applications using AI and their own manufacturing process, and do some of that stuff in house. The biggest threat to construction for hundreds of years has been lack of skilled labor. Technology can eliminate that skilled labor through automation and everything else. That's a scary thing to talk about, right? As someone that loves the industry, you know, I've got concerns over that. I don't want to lose our ethos or, all the hard workers that are there. But I think we as an industry also need to embrace that fact, and we need to be on the front lines of figuring out how to mold that. Because, I do see where if I'm a well-heeled manufacturer that has a proprietary system, that I could easily have, my own automation, my own robots installing, roofs or buildings or whatever direct, and cut out a lot of the overhead and cost associated with it. So again, I think this is down the road, but as quickly as things are moving, it'll be here sooner rather than later, I think. I mean, do you agree with that?
No, I agree with it. I think it's going to come in phases. There's no doubt in my mind that the point you're bringing up about manufacturers, and also looking at the other side, your private equity influence into the contractors, I think they're going to mesh together, and you're going to see more embracement of that technology. But where I think it's going to take a little bit longer, not, I think you're right. Your time frame's right, but probably for X typical type building, like let's say your warehousing, your distribution
Mhm.
center, maybe your AI data centers. I could see that happening. But we have so many different types of roof designs that are between 100 and 200 years in this country. I think your residential roofers and your commercial roofers that want to work inside of the urbanized areas, I don't see that happening probably for 30 years, where it's going
Mhm.
to get there because of the cost prohibitivance to it. So I think you're going to lose part of your workforce at the top end, and they're going to start trickling down into contractors that normally have trouble finding people. That's just my personal opinion
Yeah,
of how I see things going.
I think you're right. It's the same thing with AI. Like, I think AI eliminates the mundane. And I think what we're talking about will absolutely happen. Your typical, metal erection building, or your warehouse, or your whatever box building, that's going to be taken over pretty quick, right? Because that's a cookie cutter type stuff. The stuff that's not cookie cutter, it's going to take a little bit longer,
Right.
but it's coming. We've all seen it. You and I have talked about it for years. It was interesting. I did a presentation on sort of the future of roofing back in 2018, and it was for LegalCon. And I pulled it up just to see what has happened since then, and it's incredible. I mean, back then we were talking about blockchain and stuff like that, all of which is still important, but it is almost irrelevant compared to AI now. Like, it is incredible how much we have evolved in just a 7 year time frame, right? And I think that's one of the things I think kind of inspires you and me as we travel around and we speak, is what does the future hold for our industry? So John, we've talked about a
Exciting
lot.
times.
Yep, we have talked about a lot, and I have if I can find it in my mess here, I have a question that I thought would be good for this particular podcast that we're doing. This one is from JD. JD has a question about implementation of AI in his company. And what he wants to know is, there's a lot of different AI models out there. There's a lot of different people talking about stuff. When he goes to trade shows, there's booths and everybody's selling AI and hockey, and he don't want to waste a lot of money on something that he isn't going to work. What would you suggest to a contractor out there that's interested in learning about AI, implementing it in their company, but also doesn't want to spend six figures to realize it's not going to be adopted?
I think like the easiest way to get into it and start to learn, and I hate to use the term play with it, but you've got to get comfortable with it, is like a ChatGPT or something of that sort that you're not paying a lot. You can use the free version to start out with. Start finding out what it can do. Start having it do things. Start come asking it specific questions. Like, for example, if I had a process of doing whatever in my company, and I said, "This is my current process. What are your thoughts of improvement efficiency over this?" And then prove to me how it would be more efficient, right? Oh, you got to always challenge it, because if not, you're going to get just a canned answer. And those things start to get you used to it. I would like to just say I do appreciate the thoughts of where he's questioning the viability. I think we're going to be flooded with AI type software. And no offense to anyone in the industry that's working on that, but I think 80% of it's going to be useless. That's just my point. Same way when technology first came out and there was more software hitting us that did everything that you could possibly think about. And what's happened, it's all consolidated. I think it's going to take a few years for that to weed out. But I think every single roofing business owner or any business owner or any individual for that matter should start feeling comfortable with AI and understand what it can do. Because I can guarantee both my daughters are school teachers, and AI is coming into the school systems. They're embracing it. They're not embracing it the way we may hear on the outlets where it's going to replace everybody in education. No, they're actually working with the students to understand AI and what it can do, and also not only the good points but the danger zones in it where it takes you. So I think you got to get used to it.
I agree with that. What's interesting is my son's a sophomore in high school, and for his English class, they will no longer allow the students to draft essays at home. They have to do all of their essay work in school because they're concerned about AI being able to do it at home.
Sure.
So, there's some, you and I growing up, we learned a lot of things the hard way, and there's some benefit to that, but it's interesting, man. It's interesting time. It's just a very dynamic, chaotic time, and this is the part that I enjoy, though. I really enjoy thinking about what the future holds. I think it's an exciting time to be in our industry. And, obviously want to thank everybody as always for kind of tuning into us. If you're interested in this topic, hit us up. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, or if you got any other questions, you can always reach me at trent.cotney@arlaw.com or anywhere social at Trent Cotney. John, how can they get you?
Say, well, you can get me at my email at jkenney@cotneyconsulting.com, or you can get me on the social outlets at jkenney.
Yep. And we're probably both on the road most of the year. So you can probably see us in person in a place near you soon. So thank you guys. We'll see you soon here on Law and Mortar.
Take care, everybody. See you next time.